What do you worship?
Well, I don't really worship anything, but I do devote myself to the advancement of humanity using technology.
What can technology never replace?
I think human feeling?
Can science and religion coexist?
Probably not.
Do you pray?
I don't. I didn't even pray when I almost died of malaria.
Wow, that's really not praying.
Right.
So you put your money where your bug spray was.
Yeah.
Do you have a spiritual life?
Well, it sort of depends on what spiritual means.
So what do you think spiritual means?
I mean, there's certainly things that we don't understand about the universe. But you know, I'm less convinced that there's, say, some super consciousness watching over our every movement and kind of evaluating it against some criteria, you know, and deciding whether we're going to go to one place or another when we die. I think that's unlikely.
Right. I think that's very unlikely,
Right.
too.
It does beg the question, if there is some super consciousness, where did the super consciousness come from? So I think the most likely explanation is that complexity evolved from simplicity. You know, that the simple elements over time combined to become more complex and arrived at what we are.
What blows your mind? What gives you awe?
Well, I think that, I mean, the nature of the universe gives me awe, and just the huge expanse of the universe, and you know, just how far away things are and how big they are, and the fact that there are things like supermassive black holes that are equal to 1 billion suns. You know.
What about dark matter? Doesn't that freak you out too?
Yeah, and dark matter is also, I mean, dark matter and dark energy are kind of interesting, because I'm not sure what those actually are. You know, people don't know what those actually are, and it's particularly dark energy. In fact, this is why, you know, that may be an argument for this being a simulation, because in a simulation, you wouldn't, you know, you could just make things be however you want. The laws don't all have to be consistent.
I had this like existential crisis when I was a kid, and tried to figure out what's it all about, and none of the books I read seemed to actually have a good answer. You know, so I read all the religious texts, and I read a bunch of philosophy books, and they're all quite depressing. Actually, when I read The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, I thought, okay, this is a pretty good one. You know, just to sort of try to gain greater enlightenment over time. That seems like a good goal, because we don't really know what the meaning of life is, or even really what the right questions are to ask. But if we can improve our understanding of the universe, then eventually we can figure out what the right question to ask is. You know, if it's not meaning of life, it's something. You know, yeah.
I was confident that at the time that we launched, that no one could think of anything at all to do that would improve the probability of success. We racked our brains to think of any possible way to improve the probability of success, and we could not think of anything more, and nor could NASA. And so then that's just the best that we could do. So then we went ahead and launched. Now, I'm not a religious person, but I nonetheless got on my knees and prayed for that mission.
The question is harder than the answer, and if you can properly phrase the question, then the answer is the easy part. And so, if to the degree that we can better understand the universe, then we better know what questions to ask, and then whatever the question is that most approximates what's the meaning of life, you know, that's the question we could ultimately get closer to understanding. And so I thought, well, to the degree that we can expand the scope and scale of consciousness and knowledge, human knowledge, then that would be a good thing.
All of our consciousness, all civilization, everything we've ever known and done is on this tiny blue dot. People also get too trapped in their like squabbles amongst humans, and there's not think of the big picture. They take civilization and our continued existence for granted. They shouldn't do that. Look at the history of civilizations. They rise and they fall. And now civilization it's globalized. And so civilization, I think, now rises and falls together. There's not geographic isolation. This is a big risk. Things don't always go up. That's an important lesson of history. Look again at that dot. That's here. That's home. That's us. On it, everyone you love, everyone you know, everyone you've ever heard of, every human being who ever was, lived out their lives. The aggregate of our joy and suffering, thousands of competent religions, ideologies, and economic doctrines, every hunter and forager, every hero and coward, every creator and destroyer of civilization, every king and peasant, every young couple in love, every mother and father, hopeful child, inventor and explorer, every teacher of morals, every corrupt politician, every superstar, every supreme leader, every saint and sinner in the history of our species lived there, on a mote of dust suspended in a sunbeam. Our planet is a lonely speck in the great enveloping cosmic dark. In our obscurity, in all this vastness, there is no hint that help will come from elsewhere to save us from ourselves. The Earth is the only world known so far to harbor life. There is nowhere else, at least in the near future, to which our species could migrate. This is not true. This is false. Mars. If you consider the major elements on the scale of evolution as being the advent of single-celled life, multicellular life, differentiation of plants and animals, life going from the oceans to land, mammals and consciousness, those are probably the big ones. But I think on that scale would also fit life becoming multiplanetary for the first time. I think it's perhaps at least as important as life going from the oceans to land. And it would, I think, preserve the light of consciousness. The consciousness, the probability of consciousness existing for a long time would be much greater if we were on two planets. If something catastrophic were to happen to Earth, then it would, life would still exist on another planet.
Right.
I mean, let's say there was a giant meteor impact or a super volcano, or we had sort of a massive nuclear war on Earth, or some super virus.
Right.
I mean, there could be something that doesn't necessarily initially destroy human civilization, but knocks it back to a much lower technology level. And then there's sort of a decline to eventual extinction. I mean, I think being a multi-planet species and being out there among the stars is important for the long-term survival of humanity, and that's one reason, kind of like life insurance for life collectively, life as we know it. But then the part that I find personally most motivating is that it creates a sense of adventure, and it makes people excited about the future. If you consider two futures, one where we are forever confined to Earth until eventually something terrible happens, or another future where we are out there on many planets, maybe even going beyond the solar system, I think that second version is incredibly exciting and inspiring, and there need to be reasons to get up in the morning. Life can't just be about solving problems. Otherwise, what's the point? There's got to be things that people find inspiring and make life worth living.